In this video, we're going to cover roll call vote. There are three main reasons that an assembly uses a roll call vote. The first reason is to go on record. In this way, a roll call vote is the exact opposite of a ballot vote, because the purpose of a ballot vote is to allow each member's vote to be secret. The effect of a roll call vote, on the other hand, is to place each member's vote on the record. Robert's Rules of Order states, taking a vote by roll call, or by yeas and nays as it is also called, has the effect of placing on the record how each member, or sometimes each delegation, votes. Therefore, it has exactly the opposite effect of a ballot vote. Robert's Rules of Order goes on to say, it is usually confined to representative bodies where the proceedings are published, since it enables constituents to know how their representatives voted on certain measures. And Robert's Rules of Order clarifies, it should not be used in a mass meeting or in any assembly whose members are not responsible to a constituency. This relates to the use of a roll call vote solely for the purpose of causing the members' votes to be placed on the record. As we will see, there are other reasons that an assembly will find the use of a roll call vote beneficial. The next main reason that organizations use a roll call vote is for weighted voting. For example, when an organization, instead of using the parliamentary standard of one vote per member, has adopted its own specific rule that allows the use of a system of weighted voting or proxy voting, where each member may have more or less than one vote, a standard voice vote or even a show of hands is not practical, especially given the fact that members do not wear their voting strength on their shirts, as in our example here. Instead, when organizations have this type of system where members may control multiple votes or votes of different strengths, these organizations often use roll call voting to ensure that the votes are tallied accurately with the proper number or strength assigned to each member. The third main reason that organizations use a roll call vote is for practical purposes. For example, in organizations where it is specifically authorized for members to attend and participate in a meeting via telephone, and when there is a significant number of members participating in this way, it is not practical for the chair to simply use the standard method of a voice vote. Instead, a roll call vote is often used as the best solution to ensure that each member's vote is properly accounted for. So now that we've seen the three main reasons that an organization might use a roll call vote, let's take a look at exactly how the process works. The steps leading up to the vote are, of course, the same as usual. For example, a member makes a motion, another member seconds it, then the chair places the motion before the assembly for consideration by saying, it is moved and seconded to donate $100 to the ABC Foundation. Then, when the debate has ended, the chair puts the motion to a vote by first saying, the question is on the adoption of the motion to donate $100 to the ABC Foundation. Then, in the case of a roll call vote, the chair says, the vote will be taken by roll call. Those in favor of the adoption of the motion will say yes when their names are called. Those opposed will say no. The secretary will call the roll. The secretary then calls the names of those members who are present, and each member responds with a vote. For example, the secretary would say, John Anderson, and when John Anderson says yes, the secretary repeats the member's name and vote by saying, John Anderson votes yes. He then proceeds to the next name on the list alphabetically, such as Marissa Brown. Let's say she responds with no, so the secretary would say, Marissa Brown votes no. Robert's Rules of Order states, the roll is called in alphabetical order except that the presiding officer's name is called last, and only when his vote will affect the result. Now, as the secretary calls out the names and as the members vote, the secretary marks down their votes next to their names. Since John Anderson voted in the affirmative, the secretary can put a 1 beside his name to the left, since he's the first affirmative vote. And since Marissa Brown voted no, the secretary can put a 1 beside her name to the right, since she's the first negative vote. Let's say the next name on the list, Glenn Broyhill, votes in the negative as well. Then the secretary would write the numeral 2 beside his name to the right, since this is the second negative vote, and since all negative votes will be written to the right side of the list. If the next voter votes in the affirmative, the secretary would mark a 2 beside his name to the left, since this is the second vote in that list. Keeping a running succession of numerals in this way allows the secretary to always know where the vote stands and makes it easy to keep track of the count. Then, when we reach the next member, Tom Ford, let's say he doesn't want to vote in favor or against. What does he do? Well, when the secretary calls out his name, he can respond by saying present or abstain. In either case, he has indicated that he chooses not to vote. The secretary then marks a 1 beside his name in a column farther to the right, indicating that this is the first member to abstain from voting by answering present. The secretary continues through the list in this fashion. Then, when all have voted or indicated their preference not to vote, the secretary tallies the votes by ensuring that the number sequence is correct in the affirmative column, the negative column, and the present column. The secretary then has a complete accounting of the members' responses, which he delivers to the chair. The chair then announces the result by saying, there are 4 in the affirmative, 3 in the negative, and 1 answering present. The affirmative has it, and the motion is adopted. As a little point of fun parliamentary trivia here, a roll call vote is also known as a yea and nay vote, and is referred to as taking a vote by yeas and nays. Such a reference does indicate that the vote will be taken by roll call. However, a member need not respond with yea or nay. Other clearly affirmative or negative responses are perfectly acceptable, such as aye or yes for the affirmative, or no for the negative. But for the sake of clarity, the presiding officer should announce the form that members should use when voting. Now, there's another option a member has when called on. That is to pass. So how does this work? Well, for example, let's say when the secretary called on Tom Ford, Mr. Ford decided he didn't want to vote just yet. He has the option to say pass. In this case, the secretary skips Tom Ford for now. It's a good idea for the secretary to circle his name as an extra reminder that he has passed. The secretary then continues with the other names on the list. When the secretary has called the names of all the members who are present and marked down their votes, he returns to any members who chose to pass to allow them an opportunity to vote. In this case, let's say when the secretary calls on Tom Ford again, Mr. Ford votes in the affirmative. The secretary marks down his vote, careful to ensure that it reflects the next highest number in the affirmative column. As an additional note, when an organization uses weighted voting or proxy votes, where different members control different voting strengths, the voting strength of each member can be included on the list of names. And the secretary keeps a running tally of the total votes cast after each member responds to the roll call. However, in most organizations that use this type of roll call vote, a computer is generally used, in which case the secretary enters the members' responses into a program that automatically calculates the totals. Now we come to another fun little piece of parliamentary trivia. What does recapitulation mean in parliamentary law? It has a very specific parliamentary meaning, and we're going to cover that right now. Recapitulation is applied to a roll call vote. It is when the chair says, the secretary will please call out the names of the members who voted in the affirmative. The secretary then responds by saying, the members who voted in the affirmative are John Anderson, Louis Chadwick, Lorraine Finster, Tom Ford, and B. Haldeman. The chair then says to the assembly, are there any corrections to this list? Members can then correct their votes if their names are incorrectly listed or omitted. The chair then says, the secretary will please call out the names of the members who voted in the negative. The secretary then says, the members who voted in the negative are Marissa Brown, Glenn Broyhill, and Roger Smith. And the chair asks, are there any corrections to this list? Then the chair says, the secretary will please call out the names of the members who answered present. And the secretary says, Madam President, no member answered present. And the chair says, are there any corrections to this? Robert's Rules of Order states, the chair, at his or her discretion, may direct or the assembly may order a recapitulation. If not directed by the chair, a majority vote is required to order a recapitulation. And whether or not a recapitulation is ordered, a member does have the right to change his vote before the result is announced. Robert's Rules of Order provides that, in roll call voting, a record of how each member voted, as well as the result of the vote, is entered in full in the journal or minutes. So using the example we just covered here, the voting result entry in the minutes might look like the following. John Anderson, Louis Chadwick, Lorraine Finster, Tom Ford, and B. Haldeman voted in the affirmative. Marissa Brown, Glenn Broyhill, and Roger Smith voted in the negative. The motion was adopted. Robert's Rules of Order goes on to say, if those responding to the roll call do not total a sufficient number to constitute a quorum, the chair must direct the secretary to enter the names of enough members who are present but not voting to reflect the attendance of a quorum during the vote. In such a case, the voting result entry in the minutes might look like this. Barbara Linton, Sue O'Neill, and Ken Duluth were present but not voting. Ordering the vote on any particular motion to be taken by roll call requires a majority vote to adopt, unless the organization has a special rule setting a different vote requirement for ordering a vote to be taken by roll call. That covers roll call vote.